Hello, everybody. This is another episode of the SLTD Going Over Big Time podcast. I am Alan, aka the Cantastic, once again with my friend co-host Mike. We're gonna do something a little bit different today. We're gonna be interviewing a very prominent, I would say, wrestling personality in the interwebs out there. I would say. Um, it's Ella Jay from she's everywhere. She has own YouTube. She's on Twitter, Instagram. I would say everywhere. She is a podcaster, interviewer extraordinaire. I think she's interviewed a number of wrestlers, and she's been on the ground in shows before, right in their face, asking them the sometimes tough questions. And we're really excited to have you here, Ella. Thank you for coming on to our podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you guys today.
Yes. Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just wanted to thank her for coming, and yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so we're just still on the heels of WrestleMania that just concluded. As they say, literally the biggest WrestleMania in terms of like attendance. Just obviously,
Everything.
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 Ella, I wasn't sure if you were there or were you just like watching from afar, but like, how did you feel this WrestleMania was compared to say the other ones, and did it match up to the hype that was expressed?
Yeah, I unfortunately was not there, but I was watching at home, obviously, and doing some live coverage that night on Twitter, as most people do. Then, I so some of the build to it, there just was no build. Like for example, to me, like Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley on paper, great match. The build to it there was more centered around Becky and everybody else than Becky and Rhea. So the build to that match specifically was a little bit just wasn't there. There was other matches where they had fantastic builds. Like I think LA Knight and AJ Styles, they were very in depth with what they were doing, but the match itself was a little bit meh. But I think overall, like especially night 2 for me, last year night 1 stole the show. I think this year night 2 stole the show. And maybe that's because I was ready for that grand title change at the end, but I was so happy with the ending. Cody Rhodes beating Roman Reigns. It's about time that we get a new era. It's crazy to think, though, that was not the original plan. The original plan was Roman and Rock at WrestleMania night 2. So at least that's what it seemed like. So we almost didn't get that happening, but I'm so glad it happened. You know, both nights had great openers too as well. I loved Rhea Becky and then Seth and Drew, and then Damian cashing in. I surprisingly got all my predictions right for WrestleMania night 2, including Damian cashing in on Drew McIntyre. So that was a lot of fun. I'm really excited for Damian. Now he's gonna get to perform and defend his title against Jey Uso coming up. So I think overall it was obviously not every match was perfect. Obviously some of the build, like I said, was a little bit lackluster or just weird. But overall, like what a fun night. What a fun 2-night event.
Yeah, we were talking, me and Alan, like throughout the shows, and just about how like night 2 was so much better than night 1. I think from a like mainly because like the main event just dragged on in night 1. Like it was just like
Yeah.
you spent almost an hour
45
and,
minutes plus
and
entrances. Yeah.
plus entrances, and then you had all these bigger moments, I think, on night 2 that that
Mhm.
that just didn't feel as special on night 1, obviously because of Cody especially. But yeah, overall I think I could say that for us, we thought WrestleMania was a complete success, and are excited to see the future of WWE, because we have been very critical. So, Alan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were some matches that were just kind of thrown in there last minute that I think Mike and I mutually agreed that were just sort of like, yeah, I think this is where we can do our bathroom break, or like, if we need to get snack, such as the Philadelphia street fight between the Final Testament and the I guess Bobby Lashley and friends.
The
But,
pride.
Pride. I don't know if they're officially
I don't
calling
think
them
they call it that anymore, but
yeah, I definitely felt like one kind of really dragged on, even though because like he and I discussed this. Like I think I'm pretty sure the way they were gonna structure this was like Cody was gonna take a big loss, and then it's gonna be bloodline rules, anything goes, and then it was just gonna be this massive Avengers Endgame style
and
type
that's
of
what
ending.
happened.
It wasn't as
It
I
wasn't as
will
big
say
as I
it
thought.
wasn't as
I was
crazy. I thought Brandy was gonna like slap the heck out of
Yeah.
the Rock.
Yeah,
Maybe
I know,
Nyla
like,
Rose would.
yeah, if you Mrs. Rhodes, both Mrs. Rhodes, I was expecting Sammy,
Yeah.
Kevin, Jay. Well, Jay went in there, but then
Yeah.
they picked up Cena, which I was expecting, but then the Undertaker showed up, and I was just like,
Well,
they had to like put like almost 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of separation together. I was like, oh yeah, like Roman was like one of the only two people, the
Yeah.
pin taker at Mania, and Paul was kind of instrumental in being
and-
behind the guy who did it that first time.
well,
But
then
he's
I
got to
mean,
really
people.
put strings together to do that.
Yeah, but I think everybody kind of expected Steve Austin there, and apparently they talked to him, but he
Yeah.
couldn't agree on the money. So, which is crazy to me, but he's just coming for 1 second, basically. Like, but it's Steve Austin, he's always been that way.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about you, Ella, because I was just watching some of your videos. Like, I would assume like in a general basis, it's not like everybody would wake up one day and just decide, oh, I'm going to be a wrestling podcaster. So
Yeah.
maybe just like maybe a little bit about yourself and whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Like, what like your interests and like how did you get into this like wacky world of pro wrestling?
Pro wrestling. So if we want to be technical, my first exposure to it was actually on Project Runway, season 4, where the divas competed, and it was the final 6. The designers made ring gears for them. Like Candice Michelle was in it, Michelle McCool, Maria, Layla. So technically, that was my first exposure, but I was more in the Project Runway franchise then than WWE. But then the next year was when I really got into it. So 2009, I was 6th going into 7th grade. It was the summer. I was just scrolling through channels on a Friday night. I see this guy with cool face paint in this steel cage. It was Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk. Loser leaves town. Jeff's literal last match before he came back in 2017. And I just remember like, and I've been a person who loves sports. I played sports growing up my whole life. I loved watching baseball and volleyball, college sports and all of that. So I was loved that. And obviously I love the theatrical and drama of it all. So for me, kind of wrestling kind of blurred those two together, the performance art and the sports, the athleticism of it. And it was also really a good escape, especially as an insecure middle schooler at that time. So I was really drawn to, Jeff Hardy and CM Punk, and then SmackDown, like DX was on there occasionally. It was their last run. John Morris and Mickey James obviously were some of my early favorites as well. And then from there, I just got hooked. I feel like I said, it blurred a lot of my worlds together, and it was a great escape. Because preteen, teen years were a bit rough for me, as they are for a lot of people. But wrestling, was always there to invest in storylines, but also be mesmerized by these amazing things these people can do in a wrestling ring. So that's how it got started, though, was kind of by accident, just scrolling through channels. And then I see this guy with cool face paint, and he's making this emotional speech saying goodbye. And I'm like, these people are so invested, but I don't know who he is. And so it just left me wondering. So I would watch SmackDown every single week from there until I discovered there was a Monday Night Raw. And then I went to my first live event later that December around Christmas.
Oh, wow. That I hear a lot of people talk about that era, especially because of CM Punk and
I hated CM Punk.
yeah.
I have to say, I was 11, 12 years old. I did not understand that kayfabe was a thing until maybe I was like 13. I thought like this straight edge society. I made a sign because I went to a Future SmackDown in 2010 that said "Stupid Edge Skunk." Again, I was 12 years old. So lame, but I thought genuinely like this guy is so annoying. Like, I cannot stand him. I would basically boo the heels and then cheer all the baby faces as normal. But once I got to understand it, I started appreciating a lot of the heels.
As most of us did when we were 12.
Yeah. I hated him because I
don't know
didn't
how many
understand.
I don't know how many times I hated and then liked and then hated again Triple H. I lost.
See, that's fair.
I lost count.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got really upset with Chris Jericho at one point when he did that program with Punk, in which he kind of took advantage of Punk's straight edgeness and sort of did that whole thing, pouring alcohol down his throat. And I was like, this guy is just the most disgusting human being I've ever seen in my life.
Alan, weren't you like 30 when that happened?
Okay, cut 10 years from that, okay? Like, don't okay, at least.
He was 20, damn it.
Well, let me think about it. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe cut a few more years, but yeah, not that much.
2012, I was 22, so you're
okay.
You're 8 years older than me.
I would have been.
Yeah. Anyway, well, well, it's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's pretty cool. So like, I mean, so at that point, so you're a fan. How do you go from a fan to like figuring out like, oh, I really wanted to talk to these guys and like, because Mike and I we are sort of exploring ourselves, like looking into like, how do we like reach out to these wrestlers and just a lot of people giving us advice. Oh yeah, just shoot them a DM or just slide into DMs or go to more indie shows and just like just go up to their face and like ask them. I mean, I'm sure those are like good ideas and they probably will work, but I don't know how did you approach that? Like, how did you go from just a fan to like sort of build your network to like and then become somebody that they trust to sit down and chat with?
Yeah, so I mean, this was not my original career path at all. It actually started out as a hobby. I had gotten my whole dream, growing up for the longest time was to be like in the psychology field. And so I got my bachelor's in psychology, minored in creative writing. And then I was set to go to grad school to because to do anything in psych, you really have to have at least a master's. So I had gotten accepted into graduate school. So this is the spring of 2019. So this is like April, May. I'm like set to go in the fall and all of that in a program that I was really looking forward to. But at the same time, I was like, I don't really know if this is really what I want to do. And I'm already in debt because I went to a private college. So I was like, I'm going to take a semester or a year off just to be sure that this is really what I want to do, because it's going to be even more debt in grad school. So I unenrolled like May-ish. And then, we called a shoot job, day job. I don't know what you want to call it in wrestling. I was working retail at that time. I was like, I'm going to work retail, but like, what else am I going to do in my free time? And so I had always loved wrestling. A couple of my friends, my good friend Samira, had started doing wrestling interviews and vlogs on her channel over like the last year before that. I'd loved people like Chris Van Fleet and Alicia too, interviewing these wrestlers, doing like reviews and stuff. I was like, I love wrestling, and like I always felt closeted, like a closeted fan in real life. The internet was kind of my outlet, like wrestling Twitter. I was deeply immersed in wrestling Twitter for the longest time and still am. That felt like my outlet to talk about this thing that I love. So I was like, let me take it to the next level and start my own podcast. Originally, I was just planning on doing like review, kind of what you guys are doing, reviews, prediction shows, maybe have a guest occasionally to like talk about stuff, maybe occasional interviews. So I did that, but then once I started interviewing, and if you're wanting to get into more interviews, this is what I did. I started out with people who I was very familiar with, that I was close to, that I knew would do an interview for me. Start off with the people that you already know. So I started off with Samira. I had built a good rapport with Alicia too. I was friends with Kelly Klein at the time. And so I started off with people I knew, interview wise. But then I realized I love interviewing so much. And maybe it's like my psychology background. I also took some journalism and communication courses in college, so I feel like that helped me out a bit too. But I really loved interviews. So then from there, I came not totally exclusive, but basically the bulk of my podcast line now is mostly interviews with occasional like fun review shows or something like that. So it started out as a hobby and then obviously progressed into other sites wanting to reach out to me to build my portfolio. And now it's a full-time career, which is just, it's kind of a domino. It's kind of a long thing, but it was basically a domino effect of factors that led me to where I am right now.
That's really cool. I mean, we really kind of got into the podcast game like later, obviously. Like we were, I think we were both writing for SLTD at one point, and then we would go on their podcast occasionally, and then they were like, oh well, how about we give you like just your own show on our podcast like once a month or something. And then out of that they decided like, well, we'll just give you your own podcast. And that's kind of where we are now. We want to evolve it. We want to have more interviews. We want to have more guests, and we just don't have. I feel like we have to build more connections. That's been I think that's our issue, especially.
And that's something that definitely takes time too. Like I said, like I did not just wake up unless you're like The Rock, like going into like start a podcast where you already have a built-in audience. Like it's gonna take some time to grow and build connections. Like that's why, like I said, that's why I started out with people that I knew, you know, people that were very familiar with me already, comfortable with me. And then from there you can use that of send people examples of your work, but also even just I've found to just like being friendly on social media, you know, commenting nice things on people's posts. You know, then if you do it like not like obsessively, but like occasionally they're gonna remember your name or at least your photo maybe. And then they're gonna link, you know, nice positive things to you because you've been so supportive and you seem like professional, you know. Obviously don't just, you know, keep it a bit not overbearing, but you know, nice things like great match, like whatever. I found that to be helpful, and then either maybe they'll follow you or you email them and they recognize your name. And sending examples of your work, listing previous people that you've worked with, is what I have found to be helpful. But also I've also obviously gone to in-person things and seen wrestlers at indie shows and introduced myself that way occasionally too. That's genuinely a good way to do that too. But it definitely takes, you know, building up, and networking is really important. But also you want it to be genuine, you know, not just good, like I got you, then goodbye. You know, you kind of want to continue that at least friendly rapport, you know.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah,
No.
I mean, before you, the other person we interviewed, the first person we interviewed was a guy who was in that documentary from Netflix called Wrestlers.
Okay.
Admittedly, I mean, I only saw his like Facebook post. He's like said, "Yeah, anybody who's doing podcasts for interviewing to promote, want me to promote the doc." I'm like, okay, so I just kind of reached out to him on DM, and you know, we had a nice chat. He was a friendly guy. I guess the only downside, if you could say that, is when the documentary came out, he actually didn't have any lines in the show. Like he never spoke. I mean, he was like a background guy, and then you know, Mike and I were thinking at first, you know, maybe we could have found somebody that, you know, had a bigger role in the show. But I was like, well, maybe it went better. Wait, in retrospect, I mean,
it was still a good interview.
Yeah,
It was still a fun. It was still a fun interview.
It gave a little exposure. That was good.
And he gave us a lot of you know, info that we didn't know. I mean, he works directly with Al Snow, so like
even
that was.
Yeah, even then, if you're like kind of unfamiliar or there's little to work with, there is always still something to work with. maybe that's just me, but I love not interview. Obviously, I love interviewing people, but researching people ahead of time. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be as extensive as I do it. I will go to Twitter and search keywords to find old tweets. You don't necessarily have to do that, but even just going through their Instagram, or if they have previous interviews, those are perfect. If you don't want to scroll through all of social media, that's fine, because there's a lot to go through sometimes. But if they have older interviews, previous interviews, even just listening to one for a half hour, that can give you a lot of stuff, and a lot of info, maybe follow-up questions. They say something in that interview that they don't really elaborate on, but you can incorporate it into the future, or you're just curious about. So yeah, for me, I think research is always really important. That's one of my favorite things. I love finding out like cool things about people that maybe they necessarily haven't talked about a lot, or following up on something they mentioned in a previous interview.
That's very true. I mean, admittedly, before we started talking here, I went and watched some of your old interviews.
Oh
So
God.
not all of them. I watched the
Yeah.
one you did with Piper Niven for a bit, but then
Oh yeah.
one I really looked into was the one you did with Steve Macklin, because
Mhm.
I am a bit of a fan of Steve Macklin's. But
Steve's
I
great.
was surprised that he actually he was doing like some courses about, I guess, mental health and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I was surprised that the courses he was talking about was like, wow, this is like really extensive stuff. I didn't realize there was a curriculum for this kind of thing. So like, I mean, I knew he was in the Marines and he had that sort of
Mhm.
military background, but that's an interesting tactic to sort of just, do a little research. Not that extensive. I mean, everybody sort of in a sense posts everything about themselves online anyway. So
Yeah.
I always find that even in just casual conversation, if you like kind of know something, a little thing about that one person, you could try to just build on something to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, even if you know like this one thing, there's so many, like, so if somebody's like doing say Steve Macklin, for example, or if somebody's like doing some program in school, there's so many things you could ask about that. What got you interested in this? What courses did you enjoy or were weird courses? What is your goal with this degree? Even with a little bit of nugget, you can frame other questions like backgrounds or future stuff like around it. And that's what I love. Like I said, you don't necessarily need like, sometimes there isn't a lot of info on people. I think somebody's first interview on like a dozen occasion where I'm interviewing them and it's their very first one, so there's not a lot to go on. But even then, even finding the little bit of nugget could open other stuff.
Yeah, we are definitely going to try and get ourselves out there more. I mean, we're both in different places. He's in Canada. I'm on Long Island. So
Yeah.
there, and I think we kind of both have some connections somewhere. I mean, he but I have family who wrestles, so I could probably go in that direction. I have friends that I've known for a long time that wrestle nearby, so I want to start using those and
Yeah,
get
start
more
with people
guests.
start with people who I mean, I always encourage shoot for the stars, but also at the same time shoot your shot, but also kind of be realistic. There's still people I've been trying to get for 5 years now and it still hasn't happened yet. So starting with people who that would be willing to take that chance on you, and have also who you're comfortable with, you kind of already maybe know some info on, I think is
Yeah.
a great way to start.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's like almost like by random chances. I mean, a while ago, I was interviewing people who were basically like city councilors and like local politicians. Turns out one of them down by near the Windsor area, he also wrestles as a side
Mm.
gig. It's a guy named Brian White. He's in his like late 40s, but still wrestling in the ring. So I found him out that he did the two things that I was really interested about. So we talked for like an hour, first about his career and then his wrestling interests. So sometimes it's random by happenstance you kind of fall into those kind of
Yeah,
interviews.
it does
Um,
sometimes
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
yeah. I guess like my next question would be, not every interview goes smoothly. You kind of run into some hiccups. the one that I most recently saw that Sean Ross Sapp kind of reposted on the heels of the passing of Virgil was his interview with Virgil, where
Yeah.
it just came. He said it was like the worst interview he ever did, and it was just like really funny in retrospect, like because you weren't sure whether Mr. Virgil was kind of being fed lines or whether he was just half all of it. I guess like the way I would structure this question was, what were some of your best ones, and what were some of the ones you found the most challenging?
Yeah, so I mean, my best ones, I feel like I'm a bit biased. There's once you get comfortable with somebody, it like doesn't even feel like an interview. It's just like a chat. Like I mean, maybe it's because I'm friends with her. But anybody who knows me, I'm good friends with Mickey James. So like anytime I talk with her now, like I know her so well that I don't have to do any research I don't have to prepare. I can just wing it. And because it's just natural, but that's not the case for most of them. So if we're excluding kind of people that I'm already like have done multiple interviews with, honestly, I think one of the most like I like diving into deeper topics too. It was more of an emotional interview. Last year I interviewed Delmi Exo before she won the featherweight women's championship for MLW. She had like just signed with MLW maybe 2 months before. She had been out of wrestling for a bit because she had gotten into a car accident while she was also trying to run Pro Wrestling Grind. And it was really emotional because I just asked a question like, because in a previous interview, she had mentioned like that I think 2021 was a rough year for her. And then that kind of opened the doors to where we were talking about all this like mental health and everything that she went through. And it was really an emotional interview, but for me, it was really powerful. And so I think being able, maybe it's the psychology major in me, but I love connecting with people on that deeper level. So I think for me, she was really raw and emotional and very transparent. But I also made it very clear, like you can talk about as much or as little as you want, so I think that was a really rewarding and fulfilling interview. It was different, it kind of showed another layer to the person behind the wrestling persona. But then obviously also we talked about MLW and then her joining and all of that. So kind of blurred a lot of those together. I enjoy the interviews where you can, go beyond the, the wrestler and the person behind them. So that one was really fulfilling. Obviously, there are interviews that go wrong. There are interviews that I'm not necessarily have good memories with. I won't say who they were with. But it's crazy because interview guests are so different. Some people will have long-winded answers. Some people will have short as heck answers. And I think it's the short answers that peeve me a little bit because it's hard. You come in, everybody's different. You work with what you got. I just want to say you work with what you got, and I'm grateful for everybody who I've talked with. But at least with the long answers, you can elaborate, and they're giving you a lot of good stuff. The short answers, when you're expecting maybe a 20-30 minute interview, turns into like 8 to 10 minutes because of the short answers. It's a little bit like
it's hard to build.
Yeah, and then at that point you kind of have to wing. You can go in prepared. I come in super prepared, mainly have all my questions written down. Sometimes in those cases though, you kind of have to have backup questions in the back of your mind. Sometimes you can prepare as you want, but you can't prepare all the time for the guest. You're just based on their disposition, on their talking abilities. So there's also been some instances where guests will say stuff that's kind of out of pocket that I'm like, I can't air that. So I won't say there's one in particular where I had to do a little bit of not heavy editing, but there was definitely some moments where I had to edit it out. Because they were taking shots, kind of unnecessary, kind of rude shots at another wrestler. I'm like, I can't air this. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And in that sake, I'm glad that I control kind of what's put out there and edited and all of that. So you're gonna get good interviews. Sometimes you're gonna get bad interviews, and with the bad interviews, you don't necessarily have to work with that person again. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But keep it professional, of course. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, do I really want to work with you again? There's a lot of things that can go right and go wrong. Obviously, tech issues just happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes my mic will cut out, sometimes their internet will die. That's like totally different, but when they're saying stuff that's kind of out of pocket and kind of glaringly rude, that is a little bit questionable.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least you have the experience of knowing that info, but you don't have to put it
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. I mean, you could, if I really wanted to, it would have been,
Yeah.
good clicks and stuff, but also
Yeah.
sometimes the click or the clout, as they say, just isn't worth it. Everybody has different views. If other people were in my situation, they probably would have aired it, because technically they're not the one saying it, that other person is.
Yeah.
It depends. It just depends what you value and what you want to put out there. I personally didn't want to put it out there, though.
Well, especially if you want to build more of a positive view.
Yeah. Not
I
everything is positive, though, and
Yeah.
and I understand that, but in certain instances, if you cross a certain line, then I'm not. Go ahead, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think switching gears a little, I think you've given us a lot of info that I think we're going to use in the future and try to build our brand. And I kind of wanted to get your opinion, because we recently had a episode where we talked extensively for the second time about women's wrestling.
Mhm.
And I thought maybe you would have a great perspective, obviously. And we've been talking about how we see a lot of improvements pretty much everywhere. Um, and I wanted to get your perspective pretty much on like how you feel about women's wrestling as a whole, and like where it's going, and like WWE, AEW, indies. Like how do you feel about where women's wrestling is going?
I think overall, honestly, I think especially on the indies, obviously there's still some promoters, even one of my local promotions that like will not book a women's match, or they'll book one every other show, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But I think overall, especially on the indies and obviously like in Japan,
Oh yeah.
women's wrestling has been given a bigger spotlight. We're getting more all women shows. We're getting like 3 women's matches on a card, like,
Hmm.
which wasn't the case even just like 5 years ago. So I think especially in those realms, it's definitely improving a lot. We're getting a lot more women in positions of power, obviously on the commentary table, ring announcing, and in general, especially on the indies, it's definitely progressing at an upward trajectory. I feel obviously, not everything's going to be perfect. You're still going to have, like I said,
Of
those
course.
occasional I don't even know what you would call them, stubborn, ignorant, I don't know what you want to call them, promoters who like won't book the
Yeah.
women, which is crazy to
And
me.
I mean, like we've talked in the past about how like New Japan, for example, like didn't have women's wrestling
Yeah.
until they started working with Stardom.
Yeah.
And obviously that was an ownership change, and obviously view of the product probably changed. But seeing that, and that being like a big part of like them like going over to America more
Mhm.
now, and like you have Stardom, Stardom's first like big American show, WrestleMania weekend, and you have like Stardom people showing up on ROH and AEW and GCW. Like I remember I've been watching a lot of GCW recently, and like when Utami was there, I loved it, because I mean I got into Stardom late, but seeing
Yeah.
people like her in GCW specifically is like something that you don't think is ever going to happen, because she's one of the best women's wrestlers in the
Yeah.
world, and she's going to GCW, which is more of a hardcore type environment. Of course, they have great matches there as well, and just seeing more of that integration in everywhere. And now you have WWE possibly working with Marigold and and Julia coming to WWE, and all of this, like, it's great, and I love seeing it. And it's definitely a big jump from where we were even 10 years ago. Because I mean, the time that you were coming up as a fan, women's wrestling was not
Yeah.
not prominent.
We maybe at most got like a 5-minute match. Most of them though are maybe 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah.
And that was very unfortunate because you had people like Beth Phoenix and Michelle McCool who were
Yeah.
great and were just not getting the time that they deserved. I mean, I like that Beth Phoenix comes back every once in a while and does a program because she's finally getting to show what she can do. But imagine like those people, and I mean, Mickey James was there too, and I'm sure she has spoken about how that was kind of frustrating. And then you know, we have like all those stories about how like Gail Kim went back thinking that she was going to be used to her potential because of her TNA run, and then she just wasn't. And now it's I hate that Gail Kim isn't coming up in this generation because she would be killing it.
Yeah, but she, you know, she's doing fantastic. I think honestly, the most consistent, at least if we're going in the well, for me, TNA, I found TNA like 6 months after, or like 5 months after I found like SmackDown and all of that. So I've been watching TNA since like early 2010. TNA for me has been like the most consistent out of the bigger promotions, women's wrestling wise. Their knockouts division, they have always given a spotlight to. And now Gail, especially, great, you know, legend. She's now kind of pioneering the knockouts division as their producer. So they're in good hands, you know. Right now, I think specifically, besides TNA, who's always continuing to do great with their knockouts, NXT, Shawn Michaels, like Shawn Michaels has been doing phenomenal in NXT, which I think the main roster needs to be taking notes of, because obviously, you know, there's going to be the usual, you know, the title feuds around the NXT Women's Championship and all of that, but they have multiple non-title storylines going on, which is fantastic. Like, obviously, we have the Ariana Grace, Gigi Dolan thing going on right now. Obviously, there's Thea Hale, there's the Kiana James, JC Jane thing going on right now. You know, there's so many. There's multiple non-title angles going on right now, and Shawn Michaels has been consistent about that, which is phenomenal to see.
Sorry, to and the talent level on pretty much everywhere is off the charts. Like, and again, it's something that I don't think we could have been able to say even 5 years ago if you weren't watching Japan, because obviously Stardom and Joshi Pro and now Marigold, who's going to have all this talent that left Stardom. It's like where you get so many options, and I've talked about multiple times on here how I think more people need to be watching more Japanese wrestling for that reason specifically, but because people like don't know too much about Julia, don't know too much about Utami, don't know too much about Mayu Iwatani. Like, these are all like those three in particular are three of the best wrestlers in the world. Like, and I want more people to see that. And I obviously, I think working with these prominent American companies is going to help that. I mean, a few weeks ago, you had a bunch of AEW fans who had no idea who Mina Shirakawa was.
Yeah.
I did, but like, I saw a bunch of people that were mostly AEW fans. Oh, this is interesting. I want to know more about this girl. And then she had that match on Windy City Riot, and I think more people were starting to get the interest and want to see more from these people.
Yeah.
Alan, how do you feel about like the integration of like the Japanese wrestling as a whole with the women, and like what that's doing for the whole of like wrestling.
Well, not to date myself, but if I can expand that a little to just all kind of Japanese wrestling, it is. I don't know if this is a low bar to clear, but it's way better than what they were doing with guys like Kai and Tai and Kenzo Suzuki from the early 2000s when they really played
Well,
off racial stereotypes.
that was Vince
Uh,
McMahon booking to a T.
Yeah, I mean the low point was like putting Akira Tozawa as some kind of ninja with like a very tall, oversized ninja that wasn't even like you. I just never mind. I don't want to explain that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they're doing it very well. I would say the starting point when they finally figured it out was with Asuka, even when she first came on. At least with under Triple H, they booked her very strongly, undefeated in her entire NXT run. You know, one of the longest reigning women's NXT women's champion as far as I know of. Yeah, they fumbled her a little bit on the main roster, but I think letting her do her certain aspects of her Kana gimmick from back in Japan allowed her to a little more creative freedom at that point. Same with Kyrie bringing her back on. I mean, I mean, she chose to go back to Japan for a while, and I really think Triple H and Shawn Michaels taking over most of the booking has sort of like changed her mind and allowed her to come back. I'm really interested in this sort of partnership, this sort of potential partnership with Rossi Ogawa and what he's going to do with his Marigold promotion and Julia's eventual signing with WWE.
From what I heard, Alan, we could be seeing her at Heatwave.
Yeah, that's the rumor. That's Mike.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to actually watch a little more NXT than you usually do at that point.
Well,
but
I will definitely be watching if Julia's there.
You're gonna watch Julia's. Other than that, it's like, but yeah, I think they're doing it way. I think they're doing it way better. I mean, there are only a little bit other tweaks. I mean, I don't like the Kabuki Warriors name. It's a little bit too cliche. I wish they could have found something better. But I guess I don't know. Maybe it's just the way they couldn't figure out a better name other that would like be a bit of a balance between a Japanese reference and English. But I think overall, yeah, they're doing the Japanese wrestling way better in WWE, and I mean, I'm also optimistic about what they're doing with the AEW and now Stardom Stardom partnership, closer ties with that, having more Stardom.
Forbidden Door is
yes.
This is the time to get Stardom at Forbidden Door.
Yeah, and I'm hoping for that Mercedes Mayu rematch if they
yeah,
especially since I might be going. So
oh yeah, it's a long. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Mike, did you have anything else to add or?
Well, going off of that, Mercedes Moné, I think, is playing a big part in getting more eyes on AEW. I think, maybe not to the extent that they had hoped based on reports, but I think. Ella, what do you think she brings to the table more than anything that is going to help AEW in the long run?
Well, one, she obviously brings experience. She's been and the thing is, she's only like 31.
Yeah,
30, it's crazy.
32.
She's been wrestling for like 14, 15 years now, so she already has that experience. Two, I mean, she has that global finesse. You know, she's been all around the world. She has that exposure. She's coming in with this built-in stock already for AEW.
She has an aura that I think
Yeah.
most of the AEW roster does not have.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to shine on other people, and it's going to put more eyes on those people. And you know, like when Britt Baker comes back, and that's a feud that people like really want to see. And her against Diana, that right there is a match that I circled right away. Like, I need to see that match. Diana is one of the best wrestlers in the world. I need to see that match.
I definitely agree. I'm a little bit. It'll make sense if Willow wins the title, but I'm a little bit surprised that she's going after the TBS title rather than the AEW Women's Championship at Double or Nothing.
I agree.
Unless Willow wins it, then
Yeah.
it would make sense though because they have that history. But there's this whole is Chris Statlander the one attacking them kind of layer to it.
Yeah.
But if Julia retains Julia Hart for
Yes.
clarification,
Yes.
then I'm a little bit like, why is she not going after the AEW Women's Championship? But then again, though, maybe they want to give her a slow build and they don't want to take away the Tony Mariah story and keep them kind of separate for a bit. I kind of get that. But I think if there was anybody who was going to go right after the AEW Women's Championship, I think it would have made sense for it to be Mercedes. But I am excited to see where they're going with the whole, Chris Statlander, Julia, Willow, Mercedes thing, and what's going to happen at Double or Nothing.
Yeah, and I think it's been great seeing more of a prominent focus on other women and not just the belt, because that was a thing.
Yeah.
That was a thing that AEW was struggling with. Obviously, was the women's title was the only championship that was getting shine, and Jade held the TBS title and just beat everybody and didn't really have a lot of feuds. Mainly because they were waiting for Statlander to get back. And that kind of hurt everybody else. And I'm happy that more people are getting shine and more people are getting opportunities. I mean, like Anna Jay was on AEW like 4 times in 1 week.
Yeah.
And she especially is one of those people who has I think she has that it factor that she just hasn't found yet. She's finally getting there.
Yeah. I love Anna. That's my J sister. I definitely agree. They're and also again, also investing in non-title storylines is the thing. AEW obviously has their women's championship, the 2 titles storylines going on, but ROH has actually been doing pretty well. Athena and Billy have been doing great on there. There's multiple women's matches on there. And multiple storylines going on there, outside of the title. AEW, I'd like to see more non-title storylines. Obviously we have the Ruby Soho, Angelo thing going on there, Harley Cameron and all of that. But I would love to see even more in the future, non-title storylines. Like I said, that NXT had been great about, because not everything has to revolve around the title. There's, there's multiple men's storylines going on right now that don't revolve around a title. I would love to see more of that with the women in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Alan, you have anything to add on this topic?
No, I think we can move on. I think maybe one of my final questions, unless Mike, you had a follow-up, is I guess let's discuss a little bit about this sort of, I find it so silly, this sort of tribalism in wrestling. It makes no sense to me. See, I work in politics and I can understand the tribalism in that. Yeah, let's not get into that. But I don't understand the tribalism in wrestling today. It's you just focus on this one petty little thing, and then suddenly both sides are breaking out in hives and just talk about how Tony Khan is the worst booker after calling him the best booker, and then he does a thing that's stupid, and then next week they did something that completely
changes
around.
every
And
week.
Triple H is the greatest booker of all time, and it's I mean, the most recent thing was just this, I guess Tony releasing the backstage All In video. And to me, it wasn't that. It didn't really resonate with me emotionally. It just felt it was okay, they released it. I mean, what does this have to do with the FTR versus Young Bucks match?
Well, going off of that, just so I could jump in. Sorry,
okay, sure.
Just to jump in for a second, going off of that, I think that it helped that storyline more than anything, and that was what I took from it. The fact that they are CM Punk's friend, and the fact that they've been kind of putting Jungle Boy's name out there every little bit, like the Young Bucks had an entrance even before that where they said they liked Jack Perry's work, and using that for this storyline, I think was the best part about it.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, it's like people were saying, well, this CM Punk just kind of made history for that week by being featured on 2 wrestling companies' main shows, and it's like, who was trending for that week? Not really, not so much Jack Perry or FTR Bucks, but like CM Punk again, a guy
he
who
was
doesn't
a
even...
Windy City Riot, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, well, Jack was if he wasn't on New Japan, he probably wouldn't have been trending like that. But yeah, I'm just like, okay, the guy that hasn't worked for you for 8 months is now trending. But I just feel like these days there's just always like these 1 or 2 people. I don't even know. I actually can honestly say I don't know specifically who, because I just don't even give them any relevance. I don't even at this point. But it's like, yeah, there was like AEW stands that like a little bit too over the top, and then at the same time there's like WWE stands, and then you look in their bios to just say there's WWE shareholders being extremely like gung ho for WWE, saying like, yeah, Tony Khan doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and then you have like, okay, now I will get specific. Like you can then you have people like Eric Bischoff and Jim Cornette chiming in. It's just like, I respect their opinions from their long history with this business, but it's like sometimes I don't think they entirely understand what goes on in 2024. That whatever you guys did back in the late 80s and 90s is not going to work today. So, I mean, is it tough for you because you're such a positive person? I look at you and I look at someone like Denise Salcedo as well, and it's like, wait, what are people saying about Denise? I mean, it's like, I don't follow her work specifically all the time, but it's like, what did she do exactly that you're like spending 5 minutes of griping on?
She's better than them. That's the problem.
It's like, I don't like, how do you deal with some of this sort of negativity that you kind of probably...
The mute button is a lovely option. Like, I think I have like over 400 people muted, honestly. And that's like ongoing. That's like
I lost
premieres.
count. I lost count.
I'm curious. I'm looking now. Mute. So I have 508 people accounts muted and 254 blocked. I more so mute, as you can tell. But honestly, or that, like, I have interests outside of wrestling that, like, I work six, sometimes 7 days a week in wrestling. Sometimes I need that break. So especially when I see all this discourse going on the timeline, that's the primary opportunity to go focus on my other interests outside of it. So I don't engage in it a lot. Sometimes I'll look. Sometimes it is kind of entertaining to watch. Sometimes though, it'll go too far, and like I don't endorse that at all. Sometimes it can be entertaining over like the silly petty stuff, like ratings and all of that. Like,
oh, that's the one thing I hate.
I don't really care about ratings. Again, I'm not really a business side of this business person. I don't really care about ratings that much. Good for them, they got a good rating, but like, I just like want to enjoy and watch the product. I don't really care about the ratings and all of that. So for like something trivial like that, like, it is what it is. But I'll either hit the mute button or just, focus either on my work that I do, or, occupy my time off the app. It's just as simple as that. If it's something that I like feel strongly about, or like somebody says something like really, really out of pocket or like disrespectful, then I'll chime in, obviously. But for the most part, I just focus on stuff that makes me happy, because I don't want to get involved in this silly thing.
That's such a great idea. I mean, like, what bothers me sometimes even more is the people who kind of amplify that kind of stuff and then repost it. I'm like, no, I don't really need. I mean, if it's something really egregious and you feel strongly about, I would just screenshot it and then repost it. So you don't amplify their stuff. Off the algorithm, and then just give them more exposure to their stupidity.
Without being specific, I mean, like, people that like spread hate over like somebody leaving a company, or somebody succeeding somewhere else where they didn't succeed before, but because you prefer that company, it's wrong to you. That stuff is like the main problem. I would think, like, there's no reason to be insulting towards a person just because you don't like their opinion about a thing. Like,
if they're a shitty person in like there's certain layers. I agree with you for the most part, but there are certain people that are shit humans, whether it's like
yep, they just can't help it.
yeah. Then in that instance, if I feel really strongly about it, I will chime in like I did last week with one thing. But for the most part, I do agree with you that like, yeah, a lot of the times it is unnecessary. And it's mainly not even the person. It's just they don't like that they're working for this certain company is the thing.
Yeah. And I fully agree with you about the ratings thing because I'm kind of in the same boat.
I don't care.
The business side does not affect me. I care about the wrestling I want to see.
Yeah.
And I care about the wrestlers that I want to see, and I want to see them perform and see them do well. I don't care if it got more than 500,000 views. That doesn't affect me because I don't work there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I might have to report on it for all the writing I do, but at the same time, I'm not going to get consumed up by, you know, have a tizzy about, oh, they only drew so and so. Also, like, I honestly, I don't really understand. I know, like, average. I'm gonna be honest. I understand like average total viewership. I can understand that, but the rest of it, the breakdown of it, I don't understand any of it. Nor do I have any interest in understanding any of it because, like you said, my primary objective is to enjoy watching this subjective product and just enjoying it.
Yep. I mean, I just want to see Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay have the best match I've ever seen. That's what I care about.
Yeah.
And when we get to see that, that's what I'm going to care about in the moment, not who's watching it. Because the people who want to watch it are going to watch it, and that's why. I mean, we say at the end of every show, watch the wrestling you want to watch. And that's just how I feel about it in general. And how you could say about anything. Just watch whatever you want to watch. And you don't have to be insulting towards other people because they like that thing.
Yeah.
It's just it's petty, it's sad, and why are we making it worse for people who want to enjoy a thing that they like? I just want to love wrestling, and that's it.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up here, because we're coming up to the 1 hour mark. Any final advice, Ella, on people who are looking to become a sort of podcaster, interviewer in this space, and just any thoughts you had on that?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, besides like networking and all that we talked about, but also like find what you're passionate in, you know, be open-minded too at the same time. Because when I started this again, I thought for sure I was kind of only focused. I was going to do reviews and predictions and all of that, but keeping your mind open and in exploring, you don't necessarily, you know, have to, you know, do everything, but experimenting sometimes can be really helpful. You know, I found out that I love doing interviews. So now I do interviews, you know, for multiple sites, you know, in addition to the ones I did on my podcast. And also kind of making yourself while you're exploring them, making yourself well-rounded in multiple aspects, you know, either talking about a certain company or, you know, interviews or like reviews and all of that, whether it's video editing and all of that. There's so many avenues in content creation and podcasting, you know, there's writing, you know, there's so many different things in wrestling, you know. I think being open-minded can be really helpful, and then because then you have a greater chance of finding the thing that you actually love, and you don't necessarily have to stick to just that one thing, but if you love something, then invest in it, you know, and you know, do the best that you can.
I fully agree, and we want to thank you for being so generous with your time and talking about your experience in everything that you do. And yeah, Alan, you have any
Yeah. So Ella, where can people find you everywhere if they want to indulge in some more of your content?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I don't call it that other thing. It's Twitter to me, damn it. You can follow me there at It's Ella Jay, ITSELLAJAY. If you go to the link in my bio there, all my links to all my projects, podcasts, writing, and all my other social media like Instagram are all there in one convenient place.
Cool. With that, we're gonna sign off on SLTD going over big time. Just a quick reminder, as of this recording, on Saturday, April 20th, TNA presents Rebellion once again at the Palms in Las Vegas, and then one night after, it's AEW Dynasty in St. Louis. Those are the most recent pay-per-views that are coming up, other than, of course, Backlash France in May 4th, starting time 1 p.m.
Yeah.
European
It's gonna
time.
be great. An afternoon pay-per-view is super
Like, oh
rare.
wow,
I'm so
I
excited.
have my evening to myself. Good.
That's the
Yeah.
best. That's the best part about the.
Yeah, they should start moving pay-per-views all over to like 1 or 2 p.m. Then we can
Yeah.
have a live pack.
Yes.
Anyway,
But before we go, make sure to check out our linktree / Going Over Big Time podcast. All of our socials are on there, as well as every way to listen in to watch this show. So that is it for me.
yes, and once again, watch the wrestling you want to watch, not what people are or anybody else telling you to watch, and just to enjoy. Try to enjoy this wonderful
Yeah.
product. And with that, have a good day.